Get each member of the panel to make a quick roundup, very quickly, to the overall.
I'm sort of, it's not, I don't want it to be seen as I don't think we should see this as us and them or anything like that, because we are here as a group, and we have different points of views, and we have some shared views, and we have a shared concern, which is why we're here. I think some of us have experienced maybe more of exclusions than other people. Some of us belong to the power structure, some of us fight the power structures, but we're all concerned with what the power structures do, and we're also concerned with how it affects our personal lives. So I think we do have a common project, if you want to call it a project. Might go into hundreds of years, but it's been hundreds of years in the making. So I think it's important to recognize that we do share a purpose, and to think creatively about how and what we do together. And even if we aren't the same group, but all people who think and want to work for a future that is more creative, that we do have to actually work together and continue and put energy into it for a long time. And to go with our disagreements, not to get away from the fact that we don't always agree. I mean, I've always argued that those kind of points of tension and seeming difference are also points of creativity. It's where change comes. It's from where change comes. I think we're quite frightened of differences over here. We kind of try to focus on where we're the same. We're not. I think we should take hold of our differences and engage with them creatively before they become destructive. I mean, I think that's what's happening with this whole multicultural debate, that we haven't really addressed it properly, and we haven't really recognized that we are living with our differences, not just our similarities. So.
In Africa, they have a bird which is walking forward and looking backwards. Okay, it's called a Sankofa bird, and the meaning of it is to go back. Okay, go back and fetch it. Okay, it also holds an egg in its mouth, and it means to go back and fetch your history, go back and fetch your genes, the genes in you. You're all, you don't matter whether European, African, whoever you are, you actually come through from Africans. That's your origin. Everybody that's in here, that's your origin. That's where you come from when you check your history back. So if our history is wrong, guess what? Yours is also wrong. Okay? The next thing I wanted to say, the lady was mentioning about how the effects it has on people. There was a thing in The Voice a few weeks back where they did this experiment, which I think they'd done some 30 odd years ago with children of 4 years old. And they gave them a white doll and a black doll. And the majority of the children of African ancestry picked the white doll because that doll was the nice doll, was the good doll. And I'm not saying that European people are bad, or all European people are bad, but I'm saying the system that's teaching the children, whether it's museums, whether it's the TV, whether it's the radio, it tells you a negative. So at 4 years old, these children they were picking up the European doll. What does that say is going on? And then they come to this museum because it's on the curriculum, school curriculum, and they come and see the stuff that's in here. The other day they had a bust of a European woman with locks in the ancient Egyptian department. They moved it a few weeks ago when I spoke to Sam, and Sam said, "Good news, they've moved it." Oh, what? A couple of weeks ago they moved it. Loads of children have passed through there since then, and before then. That's all I've got to say.
Thinking about everything that's been said, I would say, actually I was thinking, was it last year there was a series on TV called Britain's Psychic Challenge? I don't know if people saw it. If we had one of those psychics in this museum, they would never get past the foyer, because this museum is covered in blood. And I think it was kind of alluded to before. The reason that a lot of these pieces are here is because people were killed for them. People died. So what do we do about that? Do we return those pieces back from where they came? Is that what we do? Well, firstly, we have to acknowledge the fact that it happened somewhere, somehow. But also, I think perhaps we need to make sure that wherever those pieces, well, if they can't be returned, that the people that are still in those places actually have a say in what we say about those pieces. I think that's really, really interesting and powerful. We live in a global village. Why is it that we need, these museums and they're meant to be isolated, I don't know, places? They shouldn't need to be. We can actually link to live places anywhere in the world now, using all kinds of technology. There's something that hasn't been mentioned tonight, and I think I'll mention it, I suppose, because we're coming to the end. Museums, like most things in society nowadays, are based around services and entertainment. The ultimate arbiters of what goes into a museum are actually you and me. If we don't like what we see, we walk away. And that ultimately will change things. And people don't believe that this is true, but actually it is true. Museums, if you like, are beholden to the fact they have to entertain you. They have to get people to come to the door. If people aren't coming through the door, they'll change. And I think we have to use that power as individuals to comment, especially on the pieces that we like. People love to comment on that which they don't like. But I tell you now, the way that human beings work, if you comment on something you really, really liked, you really enjoyed, you really felt made a difference, you'll find there's a lot more of that stuff coming later on. But they are so used to negativity in a lot of these sorts of places, they're almost deafened to it, they're dumb to it. I'd say praise what you like, and you'll find you'll get a lot more of it. And use your individual power to change things, because you do have that power.
Thank you. Ian.
Well, I think the key question that was raised, unfortunately the person who raised it has had to go, but I think the key question that was raised tonight was what are museums for? And I think, in a way, but it was the answer, because I think the answer is that they're now for disagreement. There might have been a time when essentially museums could have acted as storehouses for the artifacts collected from other people by essentially a group of educated white men and a few women who collected this stuff, sometimes violently, and stored it for their own interests and for their purposes of educating the public in their values. That may be something they were once for, and if that's all they were good for, they'd have no place today. But given that museums now exist as these storehouses that contain collections of objects from all over the world and contain people who have over years developed incredible amounts of expertise in these objects and the people and the places they came from, what can we do with that now? What is all that for? And the only answer I can really give is that we need to disagree about that, because if we agree about it, if we don't disagree, then we just hand over that resource into the control of somebody else. It may not be white educated men anymore, but it's still one voice. What we need to do is disagree about what we do with all that stuff and see what comes out of it.
I think it's been a really interesting session because it's opened up. I mean, I feel a little bit more energised because I think in my talk I said that the museums, although I didn't say they were racist, but I think that I was saying that right from the hierarchies within the museums from top to down, that they embody so many aspects of racism, which they're bound to do. And I also talked about people being contradictory by nature, and we're trying to turn that around. And I think I said that that it's not really, all we tend to have time to do is to do a smattering of small projects and trying to make them more challenging. I feel now, and this might be a momentary thing, but I feel now we should really go for gold and try and change the museum from top to bottom, because that's what does need to be done. And really, there isn't any reason why we can't begin to do that. But I also think that the point, with history, for example, the point of history and the point of knowledge is to understand the relationships in the world we live in now. And I think that that's very important to always remember, that simply having knowledge for the sake of understanding the past, or that, to make things relevant to the lives we're leading now and the things that are going on now is really important, and that's very easily forgotten.
I think it's clear that the process is changing, for better or for worse, and then slowly this will be reflected in the products. And remember that displays are only one kind of product that museums offer. elsewhere. They offer public programs and they offer adult events like this one. The process is changing and slowly the products will.